We've been telling swim coaches to have lesson programs for a long time. I think the smarter coaches, certainly the richer coaches, many of them, or the most stable, financially stable, we'll put it that way. I don't know if there's rich coaches, but have lesson programs connected with them. And we learned that from the Australians who do a phenomenal job of that. There was one time. Um, we've been telling swim coaches to have lesson programs for a long time. I heard that Forbes Carlisle fed a swim team off of 20,000 lesson swimmers a week. And he said, yeah, no, not only is that true, he said, but I was there, from which they're drawing those 20,000 lesson swimmers. I'm like, oh my God. But I mean, it was a matter of focus. And when you think if you're a halfway decent swim coach, I'm just halfway decent and have some eye for talent, and you're drawing from 20,000 swimmers and the right, personality of the parents and et cetera, man, you almost have to get somebody who's pretty darn good, who has a real good chance to make national teams and stuff like that, if that's what your goal is. Beyond that, people will pay whatever to make sure their kids are safe. And if you can convince them that it's a big thing, and in America, the number one cause of accidental death in America is still, in children, is still drowning. And we don't seem to be making much of an impact on that, no matter what we do. And there's some wonderful, ASCA has their thing with Swim America, and USA Swimming's, pushing it and stuff like that. But boy, it just doesn't seem like we're making a huge dent. So based on all that, the other day I got a call. Before COVID, my wife and I were trying to open, a swim school, knowing that we do pretty good at that. I started out as a swim teacher. You may not know, but as I was a lifeguard when I was 16 years old for LA County, and they made us, and that's what most people treated it like, teach swimming for the first 3 hours. And most of the lifeguards were like, "Oh man, just put me in the stand and let me soak up the rays." And these kids are yelling in my ear, and I loved it right from the beginning. And also to encourage coaches to, when possible, run the lesson programs within your program for two big reasons. One, of course, you're recruiting and keeping people safe. That's awesome, and you can hire your own swimmers. But on the other side of that is this great recruitment tool, and they will be able to swim the way you want them to swim. For instance, I never teach a swim lesson where they can breathe up the front during freestyle. We actually have a fun thing where we splash them when they try. Um, Depending on their level, that we're not going to kill them. We don't do that with babies, but we don't want them to ever look up the front. We want them to roll onto their back, and then from that point on, it's very easy to teach them freestyle with side breathing. And of course, we immediately teach both sides and all the stuff that you do when you're a swim coach that you wouldn't necessarily think of to do when you're just trying to make people safe. I actually taught this at ASCA. We actually taught how to run a lesson program within your own team, and then I went and did it within my own team for a while, and how much money can be made. And in case, well, I'm sure there's coaches watching this that might be interested in this. This is off the top of my head, and I have a whole Excel spreadsheet based on this, and I'll actually dig it up right now. But it was this easy. Okay, you take 6 groups of 6 lessons. So that's a lot of them, but we build the swim platforms for other people too. Anyway, 6 groups of 6 lessons, 6 kids taking lessons, 20 minutes at a time, 10 minutes each, $10 each. Okay. If you did that, and you did that for 5 hours a day, it's $1,080 an hour of income. Now, obviously, you got to pay people. You got to pay that mortgage and everything, but $1,080 an hour adds up really, really fast. I think we did it for 40 hours a year, just as a mock, and we never did it quite this big, by the way, when we were on swim team. But it ended up to be a million or two a year, and it was pretty easy. And you just go from that point on. Now you think, well, that's just pie in the sky. But we were at an ASCA convention one time, and we were showing our CDs. Mark, you might remember the CDs we had with all the stroke videos on them, and stroke drills and all that stuff. And the American, I'm going to get this wrong, the American Swim Teachers Association, I think that's what it is, bugged us and said, "Hey, could you have dinner with us?" And so Michelle and I went and had dinner with them, and they were like, "We want you to build those CDs for our lesson people because the new people that come in, if they'll know how to run our lesson program the way we want it, et cetera." And they were all so, but anyway, they got to talking about the different things they were doing, and I'm like, "Yeah, I heard you guys, as an association, you go like on trips to the Bahamas and the Fiji and stuff. How do you afford to do that?" And they go, "You don't realize, this lady right here," and she points to her, only does the summer, and she makes 300 in her backyard. Now there's a zoning thing, and we got, it's not for everybody, but for her, she made $385,000 in the summer. And Michelle and I looked at each other and went, "What?" And not that we're driven by money. In fact, I'd rather coach, five elite swimmers than, I mean, I love teaching, but I mean, that's kind of more fun for me. Man, suddenly we're thinking, well, maybe we should have done this for our lives, or were we too old or whatever. But anyway, so the money can definitely be there. On the other side, we have a friend who started his own swim school in Orange County, and he's a really good business guy. In fact, he's just doing business now, retirement stuff and everything. He was really, really good at it, but he was also a very good coach and teacher. And he started this place with a pirate theme and all this stuff, put a bunch of money in it. But he spent I was in awe because he goes, "I spent $25,000 in advertising before we opened." And I went, "What?" And he goes, and then he said, semicolon, "We sold the year out before we opened." I went, "Oh, that's probably worth it." I just kind of wanted to bring it up, and I think any coach who has the ability to, in other words, someone will let him use the pool for lessons and doesn't, is really missing out on a very, very important opportunity, not just for himself, but for our sport and the community. That's a fun way to make a living and have an influence. But this would add to that. So we try to delegate as much as possible, and that's one thing I like to tell coaches too is on purpose when we started running it after I started telling coaches to do this, and I wasn't the only one, but when I started telling coaches to do this, we purposely ran it within my swim team, and I purposely didn't teach. It's not quite true. One time I had to step in, but I didn't really teach any of the lessons, and so I wanted to make sure that it didn't impact my influence on my senior swimmers or the top age group swimmers or the rest of the staff, but we could still run a good swim program.
And the Australians are so far ahead. We were just talking about that this week with their approach with insurance is also something strong.
Yeah.
A lot of our coaches in Canada or the United States or even the UK, they have insurance roadblocks that have to be overcome. Some of the stuff doesn't transfer from law from Canada to the U.S. So, yeah,
Okay.
USA Swimming would be one place to check. Or even the AAU has insurance that is, I think, a little more affordable. But I'll start looking into this for you, and we'll keep you posted.
The You Can Swim Network has a robust swimming curriculum. Go online to ucanswim.org. That is U for United States and CAN for Canada.